So, at some point in the recent past, I made a video about what it is that really good therapy focuses on. And what really good therapy focuses on is the individual, right? So, basically, it's a matter of neutrality, bringing the individual back to their self, right? Back to them, right? So, it's like the individual is here, and that's the neutrality, and they could either be swayed this way or they could be swayed that way, right? But the intention is to always bring them back to this, right? And with that video, I actually got a lot of really good feedback. Somebody asked me if I was going to do a part 2, right? So this is the part 2 of that video because I thought that it would just be something cool to explore. And not only that, but I have more to add, and this part 2 of this video is all about relationships. So it's basically relationship edition. The one thing specifically that I want to talk about in this video, and I might talk about a few other things as well, but the one thing specifically that I want to talk about in this video, and I have had so many years of experience with this, it's the same concept of bringing the individual back to themselves. But the amount of times when, relationships, whether they are romantic or platonic, right? Whether it's, a partner or just a friend, I would argue so that it's more so with like an actual partner. But what I find is that if I'm not comfortable with something in a relationship, especially with a partner, I will more so seek externally. When I say that, though, I don't mean, like go outside the relationship. What I mean is that I will look for answers outside. So it's kind of like I'll check forums and stuff. Maybe, like look on Reddit and everything. Look for how other people conduct relationships, right? And what other people do, what they don't do, and everything. And so I really thought about it, and I was like, but that's the same thing as being swayed away or pulled away from the neutrality of, that centeredness with the self. And there's something very cool, actually, that I really just, I learned about. The way that I see this is that it's like there's a deeper aspect to this, right? The more a person really sits with themselves, right, and they're centered with themselves, and they're focused on what it is that they actually want, the more that they're actually going to get it. Not only that, but the more they're actually going to be respected for that, right? The person who focuses on what everyone else is doing, it's not a matter of good or bad or right or wrong, right? It just means that they're more concerned with how everyone else is conducting relationships, and that's how they base their own relationship. If there is something that I'm not comfortable with, right, and I communicate that to, I'm just using this as an example. This is not like real life or anything, but if there's something that I'm not comfortable with in my relationship, and I communicate that to my partner, and my partner is like, well, this is how the rest of the world does it, or this is how the rest of society does it, that's focusing, that's seeking for answers externally, right? And so I'm at a point in my life where I'm real, and I have spent a lot of time focusing on how everyone else is doing it. I'm at a point in my life where I want to communicate what it is that I'm uncomfortable with and not focus on what everyone else is doing and whether or not I should be uncomfortable with it. Because it's really not a matter of whether or not I should be uncomfortable with it. Like, it's not a matter of that I should be uncomfortable with it or I shouldn't be uncomfortable with it. It's a matter that I am uncomfortable with it. If there's something that I've learned throughout all these years of my life, it's that I need to fucking listen to my intuition. Because that's something that I genuinely have not been doing for a very long time, right? And so In this, what really good therapy focuses on in terms of relationships is it brings the individual to ask themselves again what it is that they want. And specifically here, what it is they want based on what it is that they feel, right? Do you feel like something is uncomfortable because that's genuinely authentic for you? Or are you just listening to everyone else, right? And again, it's not a matter of good or bad or right or wrong, right? What it really is a matter of is the self and what the self wants, because, and again, I've been here. You can seek answers externally all you want, right? Say, for instance, I'm going to give an example, right? If something makes me uncomfortable, right? And I find out that after reading a forum on Reddit or something like that, my discomfort is irrational, right? I'm then going to be swayed away from the validated reality of my discomfort. And I'm going to try to figure out how to not be uncomfortable in regards to what it is that brings me discomfort, right? If something genuinely brings me discomfort, I'm not going to be uncomfortable with it, Like, it's kind of like I might read a forum and find an answer and be like, okay, well, everyone else thinks differently, so I guess I'll just adapt and adopt and just forget everything that is important to me, forget these feelings of discomfort. I've done that. I've literally done that. And I know that for me, that's exactly what not to do, right? So in regards to what it is that really good therapy focuses on in terms of relationships, again, it's really the same thing. What does the self want and why, based on what the self feels? Is the self comfortable with X, Y, and Z? Is the self uncomfortable with X, Y, and Z? Why is the self uncomfortable with X, Y, and Z? Right? Why should the self look on for... It's not a matter of good or bad, it's just a matter of why you're doing it. Why should the self look on forums, Reddit and everything, for answers as to why it's uncomfortable and if it needs to change, right? It's just so interesting to me how I've spent so many years allowing myself to be uncomfortable because I've been told that what it is that I'm uncomfortable with is ridiculous and irrational. So yeah, in terms of relationships, really good therapy focuses on what the individual actually wants. I mean, it's the same thing as the first video. It's just, I think that this will actually help a lot of people because it really it shows that oftentimes in relationships what happens is that people's feelings and realities are denied, right? They're invalidated, and because of that, they tend to lose sight of what it is that they feel and what it is that they need and what it is that they're actually comfortable or uncomfortable with, right? And again, I've experienced enough of this to know that it's really, I mean, anybody can do whatever they want to, but I personally believe that the more a person brings themselves back to themselves in relationships and recognize that if they're uncomfortable with something, they don't need to figure out how the rest of the world is doing it. All that they need to know is that they're uncomfortable with it, right? And if the person that they're in a relationship with thinks that it's ridiculous or irrational, yeah, I don't think I need to say anything there. Truly though, in terms of relationships, Really good therapy focuses on bringing a person back to themselves and helping them to understand what it is that is either comfortable for them or uncomfortable for them, right? And living accordingly. And it really doesn't matter if the rest of the world is doing it in a different way. What matters is that the discomfort changes to comfort, right? And not only that, but when you can really stand in your power and be like, I'm uncomfortable with it and I don't care what the rest of the world is doing, that's where respect happens. Because when you know what it is that you need based on what it is that you feel, and you communicate that, and you don't settle for anything less, that's where respect happens. That's where, first and foremost, that's where self-respect happens. That's where self-respect happens. And again, the external is a mirror of the internal. Respect externally begins with respect internally. That's how it works. And so, in regards to relationships, just bringing the focus back to the self, understanding what it is that the self needs, knowing what it feels, knowing why it's doing what it's doing, regardless of what everyone else is doing. What is the self comfortable with? What is the self uncomfortable with? Catering to that. That's what it's all about.